Welcome to the Growing in Love for Life podcast, where it's all about saving and strengthening your marriage and creating the relationship you really deserve and want to have. And now, from growinginloveforlife.com, relationship and marriage coach and best-selling author, your host, Liam Naden.
This is episode 56 of the Growing in Love for Life podcast. Hello everyone, it's Liam Naden here, and welcome to this latest episode of our podcast. And it's a pleasure to have you here, listening to this. Now, recently, I've had a lot of people contact me who are really struggling with their marriage. And obviously, people struggle for all sorts of different reasons. Maybe their partner is having an affair, their husband or their wife, or things just aren't going right in their relationship. But they're struggling. And a lot of people are doing many of the right things. I get wonderful feedback from people about this podcast and what a difference some of the ideas have made to them, which is fantastic. And through my programs, a lot of people are doing the programs and they're making progress in that as well. But one of the things I've noticed is that many people say to me, when they're not making progress, or when the progress they're making in saving or improving their marriage isn't as fast as they'd like it to be, they say to me, Liam, I'm doing everything I can. I'm trying really hard. I'm doing what I think are all the right things, and I'm stopping doing what are the wrong things to do. But I'm really, really trying, and I desperately want to save my marriage, and I'll do anything. But the problem is, what's often happening, and this might be happening to you as well, if you find yourself saying that, making that particular statement or thinking it, is that you might be trying too hard. Many people are simply trying too hard. And you might say, well, how can you try too hard? Well, that's what the theme of this podcast today is all about. And that's why I've called it Saving Your Marriage Through the Magic of Letting Go. Now, letting go is an interesting concept. Many people think letting go means giving up. They think it means not trying at all. So that's what we're going to talk about today. And I think I'm going to show you that there's a new way of looking at how you can really create not only a better relationship, a better marriage, the marriage that you really want to have, but a better and happier life for yourself as well. And ultimately, of course, surely that's what we all want, and that's what we deserve. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to be talking about the difference between struggle and pressure and trying to force an outcome, which is either to save your marriage or in fact anything else in your life, the difference between that and actually applying the magic of letting go. So what we're going to look at today is firstly, what is letting go? What does it mean to really let go? What am I talking about? And you'll discover it's possibly something quite different to what you thought letting go actually is. So that's the first thing. What is letting go actually? And the second thing is, what happens when you let go? Because you might be afraid of the whole thought of letting go, of perhaps giving up control, or whatever you think letting go is. But we'll talk about what actually does happen when you let go in the right way. And it's all positive. That's the good news. The third thing I wanted to cover is why we don't let go, or why we find letting go hard to do. And when we understand that, we'll know why we put so much pressure on ourselves and why it really is unnecessary. But why don't we let go? Why is it so difficult to do that? And the fourth thing is, based on all of that, is, all right, so how do you let go? How do you change your mindset, and how do you truly let go in a way that's really going to create dramatically different results, positive results in your marriage and in your life? So that's the podcast for today. It's a lot of intense information to share with you. And of course, I can only really skim the surface in these podcasts. We don't have the time together for me to go to it in great depth. If you would like to go into it in more depth, I cover these concepts in my Save Your Marriage programs, my 7-day Stop Your Divorce When Your Spouse Doesn't Want to program, and my 30-day Save Your Marriage Relationship Transformation program. And I'd really encourage you to look at both of those programs because This is where all of the information I share in the podcasts, I take it to a much deeper level. I give you step by step, I show you step by step, I lead you step by step in the right way to really save your marriage, to create the relationship you really want to have. So the information about those programs, and you can enroll, and the enrollment information is on my website, liamnaden.com. I'd love to be able to share that information with you as well. So anyway, today, what is letting go? Because I think we have the wrong idea about what letting go is. Well, essentially, I think the definition of letting go is not being attached to a specific outcome. You know, I talk to so many people who want to save their marriage, and they put so much pressure on themselves because that is the only option they give themselves. That is the only possible outcome that they can see in their life. And I'm not saying you shouldn't want to save your marriage. Of course not. I'm not saying you shouldn't save your marriage. I'm not saying it's not the right thing for you to do to save your marriage. But if you see that as your only outcome, you put all sorts of pressure on yourself, and you also restrict seeing other opportunities, other options, and other ways of looking at and improving your life that ultimately can help you save your marriage as well. So it's not about not just seeing that it's not about saying, oh, well, I'll find someone else then, perhaps that's another outcome. I'm not really talking about that, but I'm just saying that if you're totally fixated on only seeing one thing, it might not be the right thing for you, or in not the right way. Perhaps the sort of marriage you want to create, or the way you see your marriage being, is not the one that's actually going to work the best way for you and your husband or wife. So you need to just let go of being so fixated on a specific outcome, and really saying to yourself, whatever happens is meant to be. Whatever happens is meant to be. That's a great affirmation to have. And when you start doing that, as I'll talk about later in this podcast, you start to put out a different sort of energy, and your life goes in a different and better direction. So letting go is also about not reacting. You know, oftentimes we're so fixated on, we want to stay in control. So letting go has an element of not needing to be in control, not feeling that in every situation you have to get the outcome that you want to. Because what happens in that, when you're like that, is you react to everything. And of course, if you've got lawyers involved, you'll know that they fit, you know, that once we get our marriage into a legal setting, with divorce proceedings or separation proceedings or whatever, and lawyers get involved, you'll know, to be perfectly frank, and I hope I'm not treading on anyone's toes here, if there are any lawyers listening, but lawyers tend to feed on drama and on reaction. It's all about, oh, I've got a letter from the lawyer, we need to reply, and then they get one, we need to reply to that. And it just becomes this whole machine of reaction. It doesn't need to be like that. So if you've got the bailiffs on the door, if you've got somebody handing you a piece of paper and demanding that you sign it, you actually don't need to sign it. Letting go is about just waiting, not reacting to everything, saying to yourself, I don't need to react to everything. I'll just wait and see what happens. Because it's not going to hurt me fatally if I don't react to this. So the whole idea of letting go is to realize that when you put pressure on yourself, it takes your life in the direction you don't want it to go, not the direction you do want it to go. So really try and take that on board, and I'll describe a bit later how we can actually do this, but just the idea of letting go is about not reacting, not attaching a significant outcome to being the only thing that you can see and the only thing you'll accept in your life, but being open to more possibilities, all possibilities, and open to the fact that your life is going to turn out okay, and it's going to turn out well. All right, so what happens when you start to let go? Because a lot of good things happen. Many people think, well, if I let go, then my husband who wants to leave me, he's just going to take everything, and I'll be left with nothing. Or my wife is going to get some sort of settlement that our marriage is going to end, and she'll get some settlement I'm not happy with. Or I won't be able to save my marriage. These are the things people think are going to happen when you let go, but actually many positive things I've found happen when you let go. And personally, I was the sort of person who, for the majority of my life, was somebody who didn't let go. I really wanted to force things to happen in my life, and a lot of good things happen in my life. But it was only when I really started to let go and apply some of these things I'm talking to you about that my life really started to work in a really good way for me. So this is what I want you to take on board as well, and just try these things, because, and I know this from experience, this is what happens when you let go. And I also know what's happened to many of the people I've helped when they've let go and seen these positive results. But the first thing that happens is you actually start to feel a bit better. You don't have all this pressure on yourself all the time. You can start to see how much pressure you have been putting on yourself. And when you just relieve some of that pressure, just by letting go, the tension goes out of you, at least some of it, and you actually feel a bit better. So that's a really positive thing. Another thing that happens is you start to become aware that there's another side of you. There's an inner voice. There's a sort of a wise, knowing part of you that starts to give you ideas and starts to give you little hints and prompts about maybe what you should do instead. And this is very, very powerful. And in a later podcast, I want to talk about this in more detail, about really who's driving your life and the true wisdom that you have, that if you listen to, is going to guide you on your own unique path in your life in a really positive way. But you can only start to hear that voice. I mean, you might be saying to me, oh, that's a load of rubbish. But perhaps it's because you haven't let go enough to be able to start to hear this voice. Because when you do, when you start to get this intuitive feeling about what you should and shouldn't do, and you start following that, you start to get far better results, and in a far easier, happier way as well. The other thing that happens when you let go and you don't get involved in being determined to, being attached to a particular outcome or reacting, is that many of the dramas, many of the problems that you think you have, they just seem to magically disappear. I mean, it's amazing the number of times something has presented itself to me as a so-called crisis, perhaps just a small thing, and I've felt, oh, what am I going to do about that? I have to fix that. This is a problem. This is an issue. And I've thought, no, I don't know the answer. I'll just wait and see what happens. And very often, you wake up the next day and someone else has fixed the problem, or the person who created the problem in the first place, or the drama, whatever it was, they're no longer involved in that drama. They're no longer pushing it. So many of these things, many dramas will simply disappear. You don't need, as I said earlier, you don't need to react to everything. Just wait. Just see what happens. When you've let go, many of the dramas, most of the dramas, in fact, that you think were problems, may well just disappear. And people are going to react to you differently as well. If you simply just let go, you become a person that you can't argue with. And the interesting thing is, if you are a person that people can't argue with, they're not going to argue with you. Have you noticed people want to get into an argument, or if they want to get into an argument, they can only do it with someone who argues back. They don't get the satisfaction that an argument gives them if they're not getting any feedback, any negative feedback. So if you just simply become somebody who lets go and doesn't get involved in the drama, who just lets go, people are going to react to you differently. They're going to treat you with more respect. And the people who are interested in drama are going to realise they're not going to get very far with you, so they're just going to stop, or certainly reduce dramatically the amount of drama they try and involve you in. The other thing that happens when you let go, and this is related to listening to that inner voice, is you start to make better decisions. Because you're using positive energy, not negative energy, instead of just doing lots and lots of activity and doing a lot of things wrong, you do a lot less, but they tend to be the things that are right. And I think this is one of the things, not just in a relationship, but in life in general, it's not about the amount of activity you do, it's about the results you get, isn't it? So if we look at it specifically from a relationship or a marriage perspective, if you talk to your wife or your husband 20 times, it doesn't matter how often doesn't matter those 20 times how often you've spoken to them. It's what you've said in those 20 occasions. Now, what I mean really by that is, isn't it better to say 3 things that are positive, powerful, are going to make your husband or your wife feel good about you and about your marriage? Isn't it better to say 3 things like that than 20 things that are dealing with the problems, how we're going to fix this, you're doing accusations, criticism, complaining, all of those things? So it's not about the quantity, it's about the quality of your time and interaction. And the quality of your time and interaction does get a lot better when you simply let go and you're not attached to any outcome or any drama. So I'm sure you can see there are lots of positive things that happen when you let go. And I really encourage you to try this and start to see them for yourself. See them in your own life. See them in action, because when you do, that's when you'll really buy into this idea, when you see it working for yourself, and you'll really employ it, and it will make a big difference in your life. But let's look now at why we don't let go. If there are all these positive things that happen, and at the moment you're taking my word for it, although I'm sure by listening to what I've said, there must be a part of you that, or you must agree in part with what I've said, that it sounds logical. But why is it that we don't let go? Because you've probably got these thoughts in your head. Well, that's all very well, but if I let go, I can't, because I've got to save my marriage. I've got to make this relationship work. I love my wife. I love my husband, and I just can't let go. Well, the reason you can't let go is the universal reason: fear. Fear is the reason we don't let go, and we don't just allow things to happen. And what are we afraid of? Well, generally what we're afraid of is we're afraid of what we think will happen to us and to our marriage if we let go. And many people come to me and they do my programs and they say, I'm really committed to saving my marriage, and they'll do absolutely anything to achieve that outcome. And I say, that's great. All right, so they do all the steps of my program. And even if they haven't done my program, they do a lot of the right things. And then they contact me and say, it's still not really working. Made a big improvement, but it's not working. And I'll say, well, you said you'd try anything. Are you still prepared to try anything? And they say, yes, of course. I said, well, what's the one thing you haven't tried? You haven't tried letting go. That's an interesting concept, isn't it? But we're afraid to let go. We think, well, if I let go, my marriage is going to fail. If I don't force everything to happen, my marriage is going to fail. And if my marriage fails, I don't know what's going to happen to me. I don't know what's going to happen to my family. I don't know what people are going to think of me. And very much too, the other fear that we often have is, I will always think that I didn't do everything I could to save our marriage. Perhaps that's a fear that you have, that if you don't really push, try hard, do everything just with grim determination, that your marriage will fail, and you will say to yourself for the rest of your life that your marriage failed and you didn't try everything that you could to save it. Well, I'm suggesting that you try the one thing you probably haven't tried, which is just to let go. That is trying. Letting go is not giving up. Letting go is allowing things to happen, allowing yourself to be in a much more positive space where you can deal things in the right way, at the right time, using your inner wisdom and also some of the information and knowledge that you pick up along the way on the right things to do, such as through my programs and these other podcasts. But it's doing it in a way that is not forcing the issue. Maybe that's the one thing that you haven't tried. And that is actually trying something. It's not giving up, as I said. So how do you resolve your fears? Well, I've already mentioned some of the fears that most people have about letting go or about losing their marriage in general, in fact. So if you have any of those fears, or if you have other fears, which I'm sure you do, because we all do, you've got to look at what those fears are. That's the first step, is to uncover them. In my programs, particularly my 30-day program, I show you some very powerful techniques to discover what your fears truly are and how to quickly get rid of those fears so that you can move on in a much better way. But you need to look at your fears and say, what am I really afraid of? What am I afraid that will happen to me if I don't save my marriage? And part of that is seeing new possibilities and looking at each of your fears and saying, well, I'm afraid of this. Is it really likely to happen? It's possible it could happen, but maybe some good things could happen. And maybe some good things could happen if I let go and didn't try so hard and just followed the principles that we're talking about in this podcast. So that's really one of the most important ways that you can let go, is to look at and resolve your fears. That's how you change your mindset. This is how you let go, is to deal with those things that are stopping you from letting go, which are your fears. Another important way of letting go and really changing your whole outlook here so that you're just a calm, relaxed person who deals with things in a letting go sort of way, is to look at the positive things in your life. You know, we get so caught up when we have a problem, particularly a big problem, such as our marriage falling apart. We get very fixated on the problems, the big issues and the small issues, and all we can see, or we deal with, of our mental energy is focusing on those problems, focusing on the negative. But, you know, as I've said in podcasts before, whatever you focus on, you get more of. So if you're focusing on the negative, you're simply going to get more negative. It's never going to go away. You need to break that pattern. You need to break the cycle of what you attract into your life, of the energy that you put out. So start to think about the positive. And all of us, here's a topic for another podcast, and I've talked before in podcasts about the power of gratitude, but all of us have so much to be grateful for in our life. I won't go on about that because I listened to my earlier podcast where I talk about that, about gratitude. But we have so much to be grateful for, and that can really help us let go when we decide, I'm not going to think about this problem. I don't need to deal with it right now. What's good about my life? Switch your thinking. You can do it. We have these minds, these powerful tools called the mind that we can use any way we want, and we can switch our thinking and start thinking positive. And I know you've probably thought, positive thinking doesn't work. Well, actually it does work. The people who say positive thinking doesn't work are the people who believe the negative statement, which is that positive thinking doesn't work. And secondly, they're the ones who don't use the technique, use the tool of thinking positively. I don't mean in a rah-rah sort of way. I mean in gratitude. Think gratitude. What can I be grateful for in my life? There's so much I can be grateful for. And the last way to help you to change your mindset and really develop this whole feeling of letting go and allowing the magic of what it can do for you in your marriage and your life, how you can get it to work for you, is to realize that nothing is fatal or permanent. You might have all sorts of problems at the moment. Your marriage might be falling to bits. But it's not going to last forever. Nothing does. And I remember a few years ago when I was living on my mother's couch, I was in court with 2 ex-wives at the same time. I'd lost absolutely everything I had, including my income, everything I owned, all my friends, my homes, everything. And I was faced with all of these enormous problems and daily barrages from lawyers and creditors, and I had nothing. And then I remember someone saying to me, "This too shall pass." And I've always remembered that. This too shall pass. It doesn't matter what you're going through now. It's not going to be forever. And if you can start applying some of these ideas, if you can start letting go, if you can start just allowing yourself not to be drawn into the negative all the time, not being drawn into, I have to make this happen, this is the only way I can be happy is if this happens. If you can stop yourself being drawn into all of that, not only will things pass, they'll pass, the negative will pass more quickly, more easily, and you'll end up in a much happier place and a much truer place for where you are supposed to be, for where your true happiness lies. And that's what your inner voice, if you let it, is going to guide you to find. Hopefully it's with a better marriage than you ever possibly imagined you could have in your situation right now. But you need to apply some different information. You need to apply some different ways of doing things, ways of looking at things, and then you'll get different results. So this is all about the magic of letting go. And as I said, it really is magic. What will happen if you do this will be magic. You'll wake up sometimes and things will happen. You go, I wonder how that happened. It seems like magic. And that's simply the way it works. So anyway, I hope you found this podcast useful. That's all I've got time to share with you today. Just try this. Try letting go. Try seeing what happens. And I hope sometime you'll join me in one of my programs, my 7-Day Stop Your Divorce, or my Save Your Marriage program. Or I hope in some way I can help you to really improve your marriage, improve your relationship, have the marriage or relationship you really want to have, and have the happy life that you deserve to have. So I wish you all the best. Thanks again for listening, and I'll talk to you again soon. Bye for now.